Scientists analyzed the DNA of a 4,000-year-old princess mummy. What they found is terrifying. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History Channel. My friends, there are moments when the history we once believed to be well understood is suddenly turned upside down by a discovery buried deep beneath the earth. It may sound hard to believe, right? But think about this. What if one day, a group of archaeologists unearthed something that completely contradicted everything written in history books? What would happen then? Across the world, from arid deserts and dense jungles to lands long thought forgotten, scientists continue to excavate without pause. And interestingly, the deeper they dig, the more mysteries they uncover, mysteries that even make them question their own understanding. There are mummies with features that don't belong to any known civilization. There are ancient structures built with techniques far beyond the capabilities of the era in which they supposedly existed. And there are even artifacts that force us to ask, were humans in the past really as primitive as we've always believed? Each discovery is not just an isolated artifact, it's a missing piece of a much larger historical puzzle. And when those pieces don't fit together, the entire picture must be redrawn from scratch. In today's video, I'll help you understand this through some of the most recent archaeological discoveries. Findings that not only spark debate among scientists, but also have the power to reshape how we view our own past. So, are you ready to begin this journey with me? If you are, let's dive right into our very first discovery. DNA reveals a 4,000-year-old truth about the Xiaohe princess, the famous princess of Xinjiang. In a place so harsh that even its name evokes a sense of desolation, the Lop Nur Desert in Xinjiang, there exists a story that has puzzled archaeologists for decades. Not because they failed to find evidence, but quite the opposite. They found too many strange things, so many that it became difficult to explain them logically. Among these discoveries, the most remarkable is a mummy known by a mysterious name, the Xiaohe princess. The story began in 2004, when the Xiaohe cemetery was recognized as one of China's top 10 archaeological discoveries. During excavations, archaeologists uncovered numerous mummies buried deep beneath the scorching sands. Yet among them, one female body stood out, so much so that anyone who saw it would pause for a few seconds. Not because it was frightening, but because it was astonishingly well preserved. The body was almost completely intact. Her hair remained, her skin retained its form, and most strikingly, her face carried a strange, gentle expression, as if she were smiling. For this reason, she became known as the Smiling Princess or the Xiaohe Princess. However, what puzzled scientists even more was her appearance. Unlike the typical features associated with ancient Asian populations, this princess displayed traits that resembled those of Europeans. She wore clothing made of wool, and archaeological evidence suggests that her people's diet included beef, mutton, millet, wheat, barley, and even cheese, foods that were not common in this region at that time. So think about it. How could a woman who lived about 4,000 years ago in an isolated desert possess features that many would associate with Europeans? This is where the story becomes complicated. For many years, numerous hypotheses were proposed. Some believed these people came from Siberia, others suggested Central Asia or even northern Afghanistan. But all of these remained speculation, until modern technology provided answers. A study published in the prestigious scientific journal Nature completely changed the narrative. Scientists from the United States, Germany, China, and South Korea collaborated to analyze the DNA of 18 mummies, including 13 from the Xiaohe site. Among them, this famous princess. The results left the entire archaeological community stunned. Genetic analysis revealed that these individuals were not migrants from elsewhere. Instead, they were direct descendants of an ancient population dating back to the Holocene, tens of thousands of years ago, around the end of the Ice Age. This was a population that had once been widespread but had nearly vanished from human history. In other words, they represented a distinct ancient lineage with a gene pool that was almost completely isolated. A rare surviving legacy within the course of human evolution. This finding effectively overturned all previous theories about origins in Siberia or Central Asia. These people had lived, developed, and reproduced within the Tarim Basin itself in remarkable isolation. As a result, they possessed highly unique genetic traits, so distinct that only a small trace remains in modern humans today. Does that give you chills? a culture that once existed independently in a harsh desert, neither fully assimilated nor entirely erased, quietly leaving behind traces that endure to this day. According to experts, this discovery not only helps solve the mystery of the Xiaohe princess, but also opens up an entirely new perspective on cultural interactions during the Bronze Age in Asia. It shows that human history is far more complex than we once believed. But the story doesn't end there. Let's return to our main figure, the Xiaohe princess. The title sounds noble, doesn't it? But the reality is quite surprising. Despite being called a princess, she was not royalty, did not belong to the elite, and held no special social status. Her burial method, as well as the grave goods found with her, were identical to those of ordinary individuals in the cemetery. So why call her a princess? Simply put, because she was extraordinarily beautiful. A beauty so striking that it's hard to believe her body had lain beneath the sand for 4,000 years. A delicate, peaceful face with a faint smile that seems to linger from the past. And perhaps that is what makes this story so captivating. You see, from an ordinary person living in a mysterious community, she unexpectedly became the key to unlocking one of the greatest questions in modern archaeology. Fascinating, isn't it? A 2,000-year-old bog mummy reveals a chilling secret about the death of the Wide Girl. You know, the ancient world is incredibly fascinating. Some of history's greatest mysteries don't come from massive monuments or vast treasures. They begin with something surprisingly ordinary. And the story of this 2,000-year-old mummy is exactly like that. From a routine act of cutting peat, people accidentally uncovered a secret that has sent chills through the scientific community for more than a century. But to truly understand this story, we need to go back to the year 1897. That year, in a bog near the village of Arid in the Netherlands, two workers were going about their usual task of cutting peat when they suddenly discovered a body. At first glance, they thought it was a young girl who had died recently, because the body was almost perfectly preserved, showing none of the usual signs of decomposition. But the more they looked, the more something felt off. Realizing this wasn't an ordinary case, they quickly reported it to local archaeologists. When experts arrived, the truth they uncovered left everyone stunned. This was not a recent death. The body had been lying beneath the peat for approximately 2,000 years. At this point, you might be wondering, how could a body be preserved for so long? The answer lies in the peat bog itself. With its low oxygen environment and high acidity, it effectively acts as a natural mummification chamber, preserving human remains for thousands of years. And this girl was one of those rare cases. For convenience, scientists named her Xiaohe after the village where she was found. Through their research, they determined that she died at around 16 years old, sometime between 54 BC and AD 128. Such a young age, and that alone makes her story even more haunting. But the truly disturbing details lie in the marks on her body. Around her neck, researchers found a rope still tightly wrapped. And that wasn't all. There was also evidence of a stab wound near her collarbone. Just imagining it is enough to tell that this was no ordinary death. Even more unsettling, her face, after 2,000 years, still carries an expression that many find hard to look at for long. It's not exactly one of pain, but there's a heavy, eerie quality to it, as if she endured moments of deep fear and terror in her final seconds. There's also another strange detail that has puzzled experts. All of her teeth were missing. No one knows whether they were lost before or after her death, and there are no clear clues to explain it. Then there's her hair. One half was cut short, while the other half remained long. This led many to question, was it part of a ritual, or perhaps a sign of punishment? Of course, there are no definitive answers. However, when modern technology was applied, CT scans revealed even more surprising details. Xiaohe suffered from severe scoliosis, and her right leg was abnormally swollen. This means that when she was alive, she likely had difficulty walking and may have been seen as different by those around her. Now think about that. Living in an ancient society where differences were often met with fear or discrimination, what kind of life would a girl like that have faced? In 1994, experts reconstructed Xiaohe's face using scientific data. The result revealed a young girl with striking red hair and a fairly gentle, pleasant appearance. No longer just a frightening mummy, she became a real person, someone who once lived, existed, and had her own story. Sadly, that story was cut short in a deeply mysterious way. To this day, the exact cause of Aid's death remains unknown, and that uncertainty has led to numerous theories. Some believe she may have been the victim of an ancient ritual sacrifice where humans were offered to the gods. Whether this theory is true or not remains unclear, but if it is, then her death was not only painful but also inescapable. Another theory suggests that Aid may have committed a serious offense and was executed in a brutal manner. The marks on her body seem to support this possibility. But in the end, these are all just theories. And that's what makes this story so haunting. A 16-year-old girl who lived 2,000 years ago, killed under unknown circumstances, then buried in a cold, silent bog for millennia. If not for that chance discovery in 1897, her secret might have remained hidden forever. It just goes to show, history is not as quiet as we once thought. It always finds a way to come back to life, often in the most unexpected and ordinary ways. The 12 mummies of Egyptian gold miners in Sudan. Hey, have you ever wondered? Behind the wealth and power of ancient Egypt, the pyramids, and vast reserves of gold, who were the people who actually made all of that possible? History doesn't always mention them. And that's exactly why this discovery on a small island in Sudan has made so many people rethink what we know. The story begins on Sai Island, a remote area located about 125 miles from the Egyptian border. Today it's quite desolate, but thousands of years ago, it was a major gold mining hub of ancient Egypt. During an excavation led by archaeologists from Ludwig Maximilian University, as part of a project funded by the European Research Council, they unexpectedly uncovered a secret buried for more than 3 millennia. At first, they only expected to find a few traces of the past, things like pottery or remnants of ancient structures. But the deeper they dug, the more they realized something unusual lay beneath the hardened ground. And then, the discovery emerged. An ancient mass grave dating back about 3,400 years slowly revealed itself before their eyes. But what truly silenced everyone wasn't the structure of the tomb, it was what lay inside. Because inside were not 1, not 2, but 12 mummies, lying side by side, silent as if telling a story no one had ever heard. They were not kings, not nobles. They were simply ancient Egyptian gold miners, ordinary people, yet essential to sustaining the wealth of an entire empire. By now, you're probably starting to picture the story, right? But wait, the most intriguing part doesn't stop there. It lies in the details surrounding them. These mummies have been identified as belonging to Egypt's New Kingdom period, around 1150 to 1077 BC. This was a time when Egypt reached the height of its power, expanding its influence into many regions, including what is now Sudan. So what were these miners doing here? The answer is clear. They were extracting gold. Sai Island was once a crucial mining site where laborers worked under harsh conditions to fuel the wealth of an empire. But what puzzled archaeologists wasn't just their identity, it was how they were buried. A mass grave is highly unusual in ancient Egyptian culture, where burials were typically careful and individualized. So why were these 12 individuals laid to rest together? Could they have died in the same event? A mining accident? Or perhaps a disease that claimed their lives in a short period of time? No one knows for sure, but the objects found around them open up even more fascinating possibilities. Inside the tomb, archaeologists discovered remains of gold funerary masks, items usually associated with higher social status. There was also a gold ring, scarab beetles, sacred symbols in Egyptian culture, along with pottery fragments, containers, and a finely carved small stone Ushabti statue. Hearing this, doesn't it feel a bit out of place? Ordinary workers, yet buried with items of such ceremonial significance. This suggests that although their social status may not have been high, they were still valued in some way, at least in the rituals meant to guide them into the afterlife. But perhaps the most important clue isn't any of these artifacts. It's their DNA. Samples taken from the mummies have been sent to the Max Planck Institute in Germany, home to one of the world's leading laboratories in archaeological genetics. There, scientists hope to read the hidden story behind these remains. They want to know where these miners came from, what their health was like, whether they showed signs of disease or injury, and most importantly, what caused them to die together and be buried in the same grave. With just a small amount of genetic data, an entire life story can begin to take shape. It may sound unbelievable, but that's the power of modern science. And who knows, once these analyses are complete, we may not only understand the deaths of these 12 individuals, but also gain a clearer picture of the lives of ordinary workers in one of the greatest civilizations in history. Because sometimes, the greatest secrets aren't hidden in grand palaces, they're buried alongside ordinary people, in places few ever think to look. Bizarre cache of animal mummies in Egypt. Lion cubs, cobras, and the mystery of ancient rituals. Just imagine this. What if one day people opened an ancient tomb and instead of human remains, they found an entire collection of mummified animals from lions and snakes to crocodiles? How would that feel? Even thinking about it sends a chill down your spine, right? And the truth is, this isn't imagination. It actually happened in Egypt, a land already famous for its thousands of unsolved mysteries. At the ancient necropolis of Saqqara, one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt, researchers uncovered a discovery that surprised even the most experienced experts. But of course, this treasure wasn't gold or royal tombs. It was a vast collection of animal mummies, preserved in remarkably good condition. What makes this discovery especially fascinating is the diversity of the subjects inside. There was a lion cub, an extremely rare find, as very few mummified lions have ever been discovered before. Alongside it were the remains of 5 large cats, as well as cobras, animals closely associated with power and divinity in Egyptian culture. And it didn't stop there. There were also crocodiles and birds, all carefully mummified and astonishingly well preserved over time. According to experts, these mummies date back to around the 7th century BC, a period when religious beliefs and rituals played a central role in daily life. In fact, the head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities once stated that this discovery is not just an excavation, it opens a doorway to a deeper understanding of how ancient people viewed the world. And when you look a little deeper, everything begins to follow its own kind of logic. In ancient Egyptian culture, animals were not just ordinary creatures. They represented gods, supernatural power, and sometimes even served as a bridge between humans and the spiritual realm. For example, cats were closely associated with the goddess Bastet, a symbol of protection and family. Cobras represented royal authority and divine power. Crocodiles were linked to the god Sobek, the deity of the Nile and strength. So mummifying these animals was no random act. According to some Egyptologists, ancient people often offered special gifts to their gods, and one of those offerings was mummified animals. This was a way to show devotion, to seek protection, or to ask for blessings. In other words, each animal mummy here is not just a specimen, but a part of a sacred ritual. But what makes this discovery even more intriguing is this. Why were there so many of them, all buried in one place? Could this have been a large-scale ritual center? Or a site where offerings were gathered over many generations? To this day, scientists are still working to find definitive answers. However, one thing is certain. This discovery has given us an entirely new perspective on ancient Egypt. It's not just about pyramids or human mummies. It's about a rich spiritual world where animals played a role just as important. And perhaps the most fascinating part is this. The more we uncover, the more we realize how little we truly know about this civilization. What do you think? Do you believe these animal mummies were simply offerings? Or could they be hiding deeper secrets that we haven't yet uncovered? Drop your thoughts in the comments below so everyone can join the discussion. Burial chamber of 35 Egyptian mummies on the banks of the Nile. Have you ever imagined this scene? One day, you step into an ancient room, dark, silent to the point where you can hear your own heartbeat, and then suddenly realize that dozens of mummies are lying all around you? How would you react? If you haven't, then come with me to the west bank of the Nile, in the city of Aswan, Egypt. Here stands the tomb of a well-known religious figure of the Ismaili sect, the Aga Khan. But today, we're not focusing on that tomb. Instead, we're looking at a discovery made nearby. During a survey and excavation in the area, archaeologists uncovered a mysterious ancient burial chamber containing as many as 35 mummies. Yes, you heard that right. Not just a few scattered remains, but an entire space filled with ancient Egyptian mummies, lying in silence for thousands of years. Archaeological analysis indicates that these mummies date back to around the 6th century BC, a time when burial rituals and beliefs about the afterlife had become highly complex. Each individual in that chamber once lived, had a family, and carried their own story. Yet in the end, they were all laid to rest together in the same space. Naturally, this raises a compelling question. Who were they, and why were they buried together? For now, those questions remain unanswered. However, one notable detail found inside the chamber was a stretcher made of palm wood and linen. It may sound simple, but it reveals an important part of ancient Egyptian funeral practices. Most likely, this was used to transport the deceased from the place of death to their final resting place. This suggests that burial was not a random act. It was a carefully organized process, rich with ritual meaning, and that's not all. Scattered throughout the chamber were numerous ancient artifacts. Some grave goods were placed beside the mummies, like gifts sent along with the deceased into the afterlife. Notably, some jars still contained leftover food, a small detail, but one that speaks volumes. Ancient Egyptians believed that after death, the soul continued to exist and required care. Food, personal items, and even valuable objects were buried with the dead as preparation for life in the next world. In addition, archaeologists found fragments of gold-plated funerary masks, objects typically used to protect and honor the deceased. Even more intriguing was a small statue depicting a bird with a human head, a symbol of the soul in ancient Egyptian belief. It may sound unusual, but for them, this represented the soul as something that could separate from the body, fly freely, yet still remain connected to the world of the living. When all these details come together, they paint a clearer picture of how ancient Egyptians viewed death. To them, death was not an end, but a continuation of a journey. Yet what makes this discovery truly remarkable is not just the number, 35 mummies, but the fact that they were all placed together in a single space. Was this a large family, a community, or a group of people who shared the same fate? For now, the answer remains unknown. And perhaps it is precisely this mystery that makes the story so captivating, because the more we explore, the more we realize that each mummy is not just a body, but a piece of history, waiting to be assembled into a complete story of its own. 4,000-year-old palace that rewrites the history of ancient civilization. There are places that, at first glance, seem completely ordinary, just an old mound of earth lying quietly along a border. But beneath the surface, they may be hiding an entire chapter of history that humanity has almost forgotten. And the story of this 4,000-year-old palace begins in just such a place. At Oylum Huyuk, located right along the border between Turkey and Syria, a name that might sound unfamiliar, archaeologists have made a discovery that is forcing experts to rethink the ancient civilizations of this region. During excavations, a team from Gaziantep University uncovered a massive structure. It wasn't a house nor a typical residential area. Instead, it turned out to be the remains of an ancient palace dating back roughly 4,000 years. That alone is astonishing. But what surprised archaeologists even more was the scale and layout of the structure. What they found suggests that the palace shares similarities with major centers of power discovered in well-known ancient cities like Alalak and Tilman Huyuk. This means the site was far from insignificant. It was once a center of authority, a place where major decisions may have been made, where political meetings took place, and perhaps even where intrigues unfolded that history never recorded. But this leads to a big question. If this was once such an important palace, why did it disappear? Part of the answer lies in the traces left behind. According to experts, the structure was destroyed by a massive fire. Not only that, there are clear signs that it was later looted. In other words, after the flames consumed the palace, whatever remained did not escape human hands. A once grand palace full of power and influence, suddenly engulfed in fire, then abandoned and forgotten for thousands of years. It sounds like something out of a historical film, doesn't it? But the story doesn't end there. Among the ruins, archaeologists discovered a detail of great importance: a cuneiform inscribed tablet. Its content is a message addressed to a local king of the Hittite Empire, bearing the line, "To the king of the land of Nuhashsi." Just a single line, but it acts like a key, unlocking an entire door to the past. It shows that this site once had connections to the Hittite kingdom, one of the major civilizations of the region at that time. And this could help researchers better understand the role of this palace within a broader historical context. Experts estimate that most of the palace still lies buried underground, about 10 to 13 feet below the surface. This means that what has been uncovered so far is only the beginning. So think about it. If just a small portion has already astonished archaeologists, What secrets might still lie beneath? An untouched treasure? Writings that have never been read? Or even evidence that could reshape how we understand the history of this region? It's hard to say, isn't it? But I have a feeling you might already have your own answer. So don't hesitate, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's explore this mystery together. Mysterious pyramid reveals the timeless face of a 4,000-year-old princess. When we think of pyramids, we usually imagine massive structures filled with unsolved mysteries, especially those in Egypt. But here's the thing, not all Egyptian pyramids are famous. Some lie quietly beneath layers of sand, unnoticed until one day, they reveal a secret powerful enough to astonish the entire archaeological world. And the case at Dahshur, an ancient royal necropolis located about 22 miles south of Cairo, is a perfect example. During a survey conducted by experts from Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, they discovered a pyramid with an unusual structure, unlike the ones previously known. That alone was enough to prompt a deeper excavation. Then, upon entering the interior, they came across an ancient coffin resting silently in a sealed space for thousands of years. At first, the coffin didn't seem particularly remarkable. It had been broken into multiple pieces, its wood decayed, its parts scattered by the passage of time. But as the fragments were carefully reassembled, something unexpected began to emerge. A face. Not just a simple drawing, but a carefully detailed human face carved directly onto the surface of the coffin. Every line, every feature was distinct, so much so that it felt less like an artifact and more like the presence of a real person. Why would ancient people carve a face onto a coffin? What were they trying to preserve? The answer came through scientific analysis. Experts determined that the remains inside belonged to Hatshepsut, the daughter of Pharaoh Amenemhat, who lived around 4,000 years ago. A royal figure, yet one who appears only rarely in historical records. That's why this discovery feels like finding a missing piece of a long-lost puzzle. Beyond the coffin, the burial site also contained several ancient jars inscribed with carefully carved hieroglyphs. Among them, the phrase "king's daughter" appeared clearly, confirming the identity of the deceased. All these details, when put together, form a fairly clear picture of the princess's identity. But the story is not entirely complete. Before archaeologists arrived, the pyramid had already been looted by tomb robbers. They broke into the coffin and took many valuable grave goods, including jewelry, items that ancient Egyptians believed were essential for the afterlife. That means part of the history has been lost forever. And yet, what remains is still enough to leave a deep impression. A princess who lived 4,000 years ago, buried in her own pyramid, with her face carved onto her coffin as a way to preserve her image. Despite the passage of time, despite the damage and intrusion, that image endured, waiting to be rediscovered. Perhaps what makes this discovery so special is not just its archaeological value, but what it reveals about how ancient people viewed death. To them, death was not an end, it was a continuation, a journey where identity and memory still needed to be preserved. And so, thousands of years later, when the sand is brushed away, a face appears once more, silent, yet powerful enough to tell an entire story. 48 ancient lamps illuminate a 1,500-year-old secret in Zerzevan Castle. There are places that are more than just ruins. They're like sealed history books, waiting for the right moment to be opened. And Zerzevan Castle in Turkey is one of those places. Located near the Chinar district of Diyarbakir, this ancient structure is breathtaking at first sight. Its stone walls rise about 40 to 50 feet high and stretch for over 3,900 feet, standing firm in a harsh, arid landscape like an unbreakable fortress. And that's not all. The site also features a watchtower reaching about 69 feet in height, along with strong defensive structures, a church, storage areas for food and weapons, a water supply system, and more than 50 cisterns. A highly complex and well-organized layout. Just hearing that, you can tell this was no ordinary place, right? But what truly caught the attention of archaeologists lies deep underground, an area untouched for thousands of years. During a recent excavation, experts from Turkey's Ministry of Culture and Tourism discovered dozens of unusual artifacts. At first, they seemed quite simple, but upon closer analysis, their true significance began to emerge. Yes, the artifacts in question are 48 ancient lamps, dating back about 1,500 years to the Roman era. That means they come from a time when people lived with beliefs and systems of faith very different from those of today. Each lamp carries its own unique design. Some are engraved with palm trees, symbols of life and rebirth. Others feature the sun, rays of light, or stars, elements connected to the power of nature and the universe. Some even bear special markings, like messages left behind from the past. According to experts, these symbols were not random. They held deep meaning, tied to beliefs about eternal life, the power of a creator, and the connection between humans and the natural world. In other words, these lamps were not just tools for lighting, they also carried spiritual significance. What's even more intriguing is that during the excavation, archaeologists also found lamp molds located right next to these artifacts. And this detail is what truly made them reconsider the role of Zerzevan Castle, because if molds were present, it means these lamps were not only used here, they were actually produced on site. In other words, this location may once have been a large-scale lamp production workshop in ancient times. So this raises an important question. Why would a military fortress include a production center for spiritually significant lamps? Could it be that this place was not just a fortress, but also a religious or ritual center? These questions still remain unanswered. What we do know is that Zerzevan Castle was more than just a defensive structure. With its complex infrastructure, living spaces, underground worship areas, and now evidence of production activity, it resembles a miniature city that existed during the Roman era. And those 48 lamps, perhaps they are the key to understanding how people of that time lived, believed, and connected with the world around them. Forgotten Church, buried for nearly 1,000 years. In 1066, under the banner of the Duke of Normandy, William, later known as William the Conqueror, thousands of warriors, from Normans and Bretons to Flemish and French forces, landed on the shores of England. In the Battle of Hastings, they defeated the army of King Harold II, marking the beginning of an entirely new era. After this victory, William quickly took control of southeastern England, capturing Dover and Winchester before advancing on London. By Christmas of that same year, he was officially crowned, becoming the first king of the Norman dynasty in England. But what the Normans brought was not just a political takeover. Under their rule, the entire social structure, legal system, and land ownership of England were fundamentally rewritten. They built formidable fortresses, introduced Norman law, and left a legacy that still shapes the country today. During his campaign of expansion, William passed through a remote area within the parish of Stoke. About half a mile from the main village stood a solitary church known as St. Mary's. Built around the year 1080, this church sat in a low-lying area, surrounded only by empty fields. Over the centuries, it gradually fell into obscurity, and when a new church was constructed in a more convenient location in the 19th century, St. Mary's was abandoned, eventually demolished, seemingly bringing its chapter of history to a permanent end. But nearly a millennium later, its fate took an unexpected turn. When the British government launched the HS2 high-speed railway project through this region, they had no idea they were about to uncover a buried historical treasure. A team of archaeologists, led by Dr. Rachel Wood, began excavating the site where St. Mary's once stood. What they discovered was astonishing. Thousands of ancient graves, along with numerous artifacts from different periods, began to emerge. And the findings didn't stop at the Norman era. As they dug deeper, archaeologists uncovered the remains of an Anglo-Saxon church, built before the Normans ever arrived. Evidence from the Bronze Age, Iron Age, and even traces of Roman life were also found, proving that this area had been an important cultural crossroads for centuries. Among the most striking discoveries were square flint stone walls, about 3 feet wide, surrounded by a circular ditch. This design closely resembles another Saxon church still standing in Barton upon Humber, near the Humber estuary, further confirming the sacred and long-standing historical significance of the site. In September 2021, Dr. Wood shared, "The surviving parts of the church, including stone walls and flooring, will help us better understand the period before the Norman church was built in 1080. She emphasized that this is a rare opportunity for archaeologists to directly study evidence from the pre-Norman era, something that is only sparsely recorded in historical documents. And if you think that's where the story ends, think again. During the excavation, they also discovered the shoulders and heads of 2 life-sized Roman busts buried inside a dark earthen jar. Alongside them were multiple cremation urns, an intricately crafted glass vessel, and most disturbingly, a headless skeleton bearing signs of severe torture before death. What has been revealed beneath the soil of Stoke doesn't just revive a forgotten past, it raises new and unsettling questions about early medieval England. And the biggest question is this: how many more secrets are still waiting to be uncovered beneath our feet? Perhaps we don't know yet, but hopefully in the future, archaeologists will help us find the answer. The mysterious Nazi submarine that sank over 7 decades ago. You've probably heard many thrilling and mysterious stories about World War II, but few people realize that deep beneath the ocean, a long-forgotten historical relic has just been uncovered after more than 7 decades, stunning the world. In mid-April, a team of explorers from the Jutland War Museum in Denmark accidentally discovered the wreck of the German Navy submarine U-3523, resting at a depth of about 404 feet, a finding that could completely change how we view the final days of World War II. This was no ordinary vessel. It was a technological masterpiece of its time, belonging to the Type 21 class, the most advanced submarines ever built by Nazi Germany. The submarine was nearly 253 feet long, weighed close to 2,000 tons, could dive to depths of about 919 feet, and had an operational range of over 17,800 miles. This is precisely the type of submarine that led historians to question whether it might have been used to secretly transport Adolf Hitler and his close associates to South America before the war ended. According to records from the British Ministry of Defense, on May 6, 1945, U-3523 was attacked by a B-24 Liberator bomber from the Royal Air Force while attempting to escape. However, for nearly 80 years, no wreckage was found, fueling speculation that the submarine may have survived the attack and fled. Adding to the mystery, reports from the CIA, based on supposedly credible witnesses, claimed that Hitler was seen in South America, specifically in Colombia and Argentina, in the years following World War II. On top of that, rumors of a massive treasure, valuable assets hastily hidden aboard U-3523 by high-ranking officials of the Third Reich before their defeat, have made the story even more intriguing and captivating. The wreck was discovered about 11 miles north of Skagen, Denmark's northernmost point, and more than 10 miles west of the location where British forces had reported bombing it. This discrepancy only deepens the mystery surrounding its fate. Mr. Gert Norman Andersen, director of the Jutland War Museum, stated that the submarine lies at a depth of over 328 feet, 100 meters, but recovery is nearly impossible. The bow is buried in sand, while the stern stands unusually upright, rising about 66 feet the seabed. This not only makes excavation extremely difficult, but also raises more questions about the submarine's final moments and the secrets it may still hold. The museum also preserves a copy of the submarine's final radio message, sent by its captain to German Naval Command. The message indicates that the vessel was heading back to its base in Norway to resupply and prepare for its next patrol, apparently unaware that Nazi Germany had already lost the war. Mr. Andersen emphasized that theories suggesting Hitler and top Nazi officials escaped aboard U-3523 are merely conspiracy theories, as all 58 crew members aboard the submarine perished at sea. However, it is precisely this lack of clear answers that continues to fuel curiosity about the unknown aspects of this submarine. In fact, starting in late 1943, the German Navy had ordered the construction of 118 Type 21 submarines in hopes of regaining naval dominance, but only 2 were fully completed and delivered in early 1945, one of them being U-3523. The other, U-3525, was also considered an undetectable submarine, but it was sunk just days before the war ended. Another submarine of the same class, U-2540, also known as Wilhelm Bauer, was salvaged almost intact in 1957 and is now preserved as a valuable military artifact, showcasing the advanced technology of German submarines at the time. Remarkably, the innovations of the Type 21 submarines later inspired Allied nations to develop modern submarines, ushering in a new era of naval engineering. The story of U-3523 and its surrounding mysteries is not just an underwater archaeological discovery, it's a historical investigation filled with intrigue, raising unanswered questions about secret escape plans, wartime conspiracies, and hidden treasures of the past century. So what do you think about the mysteries surrounding U-3523? Was there really a secret escape plan involving Hitler and a vast hidden fortune beneath the sea? Or are there even deeper secrets yet to be uncovered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss it together. As you can see, the mysteries of the past have never stopped captivating the modern world. From the cold, silent layers deep beneath the earth to the remnants resting quietly on the ocean floor, every archaeological discovery is a valuable piece of the puzzle, revealing a history that was once forgotten. Archaeologists and scientists have worked tirelessly for years, overcoming harsh terrains and extreme conditions to bring us those breathtaking moments when we come face to face with a fragment of the past's very soul. In today's video, we've taken a journey together through some of the most unusual and world-shaking archaeological discoveries, findings that not only reveal historical truths, but also stir deep emotions in those who witness them. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below, hit like, and subscribe to the channel so you can continue joining us on future journeys, exploring the deepest mysteries of time. Thank you for watching, and for now, goodbye, and see you next time.